has put to our generation a great challenge. The challenge of building a world in which peace will be secured. Not merely for a long time, but we hope forever.
In 1914, the world was thrown into chaos by the start of the Great War. As a nation, America remained neutral for as long as possible, but entered the war in 1917. After a year of combat, heavy artillery and well-trained soldiers proved necessary for the mission. The responsibility of these needs fell to the Coast Artillery, headquartered at Fort Monroe, Virginia, where it was decided a new camp would be established to meet the ever-growing demands of the war. Mulberry Island, Stanley Hundred, Warwick County, and Camp Eustis have all been used over the last 400 years to describe the 8,000 acres of land we now know as Fort Eustis. On March 19, 1918, the War Department authorized the construction of the camp for the purpose of organizing, equipping, training, and embarking troops. The camp would officially be named Camp Abraham Eustis, in honor of Brigadier General Abraham Eustis, a Virginian native who was commander of the School of Artillery Practice at Fort Monroe from 1824 to 1834. Approximately 20,000 men would be trained at Camp Eustis during the Great War. Brigades, anti-aircraft battalions and companies, as well as ammunition trains and a trench motor battalion made up the majority of the population. They also worked with observation balloons and airplanes stationed at the nearby Langley Field. In 1923, Camp Eustis was declared a permanent installation and renamed Fort Eustis. Several hastily created installations closed at the end of the war, but Camp Eustis had proven its worth to national defense. Although it was originally founded as a heavy artillery training center, Fort Eustis has ties to other branches of the Army as well. In 1930, the U.S. Army created the experimental Mechanized Force. The force contained the Army's only active armored car troop, a company of infantry tanks, and more. In January 1941, due to the increasing tensions in Europe, Fort Eustis became a Coast Artillery Replacement Center and trained over 20,000 troops in anti-aircraft artillery during the course of the Second World War. The need to care for the large number of troops led to the creation of a station hospital in March of 1941. It was transferred to the Navy in 1944 and was then closed and reopened by the Army as what is known today as the Macdonald Army Health Center. In addition to providing great care for soldiers, Fort Eustis became an international training center for troops from the British Army's Caribbean Regiment. The period after World War II was dominated by the Cold War, and Fort Eustis once again evolved.
When we have troops stationed all over the world, as we have today, our Army is faced with the tremendous task of keeping them supplied. This is the responsibility of one of the newest branches of the Army, the Transportation Corps, moving men and supplies with everything from a truck to a helicopter.
To supplement the rail and motor training facilities at Fort Eustis, a major port facility was constructed in 1946, and by 1950, the Transportation Development Engineering Station would call the fort home. The organization has remained dedicated to improving vehicles used by the Transportation Corps over the years as the Army has progressed from ground support vehicles to aviation. It was that power in aviation that allowed the soldiers trained at Fort Eustis to be vital in moving 3 million soldiers and over 7 million tons of material during the frigid winters and blazing summers of the Korean conflict.
We know that it will take a hard, tough fight to halt the invasion. These and other reports I've received show that our armed forces are acting with close teamwork and efficiency to meet the problems facing us in Korea.
By December of 1954, Felker Heliport was opened and dedicated solely to helicopter maintenance and training. Today, the 128th Aviation Brigade keeps that tradition alive, by training over 5,000 soldiers annually in all aspects of helicopter maintenance. The Army's most deployed brigade also has proud roots at Fort Eustis. The headquarters and headquarters company's 7th Transportation Brigade was activated at Fort Eustis on July 1, 1966. Today, the 7th TB has seen deployment zones in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Afghanistan, and more.
Greetings, this is Specialist Roger Bemis. Today I am in Camp Adder, Talil, Iraq, and I want to send a special shout out to my beautiful wife and 3 daughters, Caitlin, Darian, and Reagan.
The 2005 Base Realignment Allocation and Closure Act resulted in the greatest change in the makeup of Fort Eustis by relocating the Army Transportation School headquarters to Fort Lee in 2010. As a result, Fort Eustis and Langley Air Force Base were consolidated under the responsibility of the Air Force and the 633rd Air Base Wing as Joint Base Langley Eustis. In 2011, the Training and Doctrine Command was established and has proudly been instructing over 500,000 soldiers every year since. Standing wars, drastic changes in mission and purpose. Fort Eustis has proven itself to be a vital source of military power at home in the Hampton Roads community. It continues to evolve and be an integral part of our national defense, impacting the future not only of the United States, but of the entire world.